All right, guys. Now I'm live. Took me a little bit to get everything situated and put together, but it is 9:16 p.m., April 18th, 2017, and this is a revision of my flood model that is on my corporation, or I guess you could say ministry page, Religion of Reason. You can go and you can like my page at www.facebook.com/religion of reason, or you can go and you can search it up in the search toggle Religion and Reason, and it should be one of the first things that pop up. We are an evolutionary creation page or ministry, and we basically focus our outreach on witnessing to younger creationists. So if you have younger creationists in your life, direct them to that page. We got a lot of good videos and directing people or telling people or teaching people that you can be a serious Christian and also accept the science behind evolution and Big Bang cosmology. So I actually wanted to have this broadcast because I wanted to make an update to my flood model that General and I are working on. General Han Solo, if you guys have been following me around, you guys know who is in crime. And we do a lot of, I guess you could say, demythologizing biblical myths and creation stories. And when I say demythologize, I don't mean we do it in a sense where we say, or we try and explain that these events didn't happen, but we try to explain the biblical accounts, and we try and pinpoint what exactly did happen from their point of view, from their reference point. Like for example, the biblical Genesis flood. We don't believe it was a worldwide flood. We think it was a local flood that happened most likely in Mesopotamia. I think it happened about 50 to 45,000 or 45,000 to 50,000 years ago. General thinks it happened around 13,000 years ago. With that being said, if you've watched some of my previous videos where I talked about the flood and what I think happened and what I think was going on and etc., I've changed my opinion on certain things, but the main crux of the model is still the same. I do believe that cause of the flood happening, the process that God used so this flood could come about was the fact that it was last ice age. And so as you guys know, Earth goes through hot and cold cycles, and so every couple hundred years, 100,000 years, the Earth goes through ice age cycles and it cools itself off. And as the Earth was coming out of this last cycle around 45,000 years ago, um, the weather or the climate was changing exceedingly, and so you would actually have the crazy conditions for a flood as big as the one that covered India. However, whether or not you would see archaeological evidence of this, I'm not so sure about. Hugh Ross, his flood model is about the same as mine, and he says no, you wouldn't expect to find any evidence from the Mesopotamian flood because it happened so long ago. But moving on into my model, some of the things I had predicted, or even some of the causes for, why did God do this, and how exactly um, did these things in Genesis come about. So my model starts out, like I said, it talks about that there was a flood that many years ago. The cause of the flood was ending of the ice age. The climate was changing, but also if you read Genesis 6, it talks about some weird supernatural activity going on, and I'm going to explain to you what I thought previously, and then I'm going to explain to you what my position on this is now. So the Bible says that in the days of Noah, the sons of God, or Benai Hai Elohim, the angels had came down from heaven, and they interbred with human woman. Some people don't believe that um, the sons of God in Genesis 6 are angels. They say they come from the house of Seth. Now, there's some really good arguments for both sides, but one of the reasons why I'm on the side that these possibly really were supernatural beings is because when you look in the New Testament, and the New Testament author is referenced back to what was going on in the days of Noah, they certainly did believe that the cause of the flood happening had something to do with these angels. If you read Jude, Jude talks about how the angels who sinned, who left their estate, who left their first estate, meaning heaven, who sinned against the people, now they're chained up in darkness. So Jude definitely did believe this happened. Jesus actually talks about this happening, and he believed this was a real event. And so I think there's some good reason to believe that that's the right interpretation of it. Now, the actual evidence of this happening, that the angels came down and they made it with these women, and these women gave birth to really tall people. They gave birth to giants. Now, like I said before, I don't believe that the biblical giants in Genesis are giants in the same sense we think about giants today. Because remember, they had a different number system. Everything about 50 to 45,000 years ago, 45 to 50,000 years ago, was a lot different than it is today. People were a lot shorter back then. For people that lived around 50,000 years ago, was about 5'4". And so somebody today that's about 6 foot tall would be a giant compared to them. And so that's what I think they meant in their heads when they're writing all of this stuff down. This person is a giant. I'm about 5'7", and somebody that's about 6'6" or 6'7", they are a giant compared to me. So that's what I think they meant. And I found some new evidence, actually confirming what I said before about this. But before I even go to that, so basically my old explanatory model was that it could be that the angels came down from heaven, and the process of these supernatural hyperdimensional beings turning into humans. Of course, like geometrically, when you're talking about like geometry, these are beings that are higher than our Euclidean three spaces, length, width, and height. So there's so much more to them, right? So they have to descend from their original geometrical space, and they have to descend into our three spaces. The biological process, I thought maybe these angels, it could be that they transformed into Neanderthals. Now, am I saying that every Neanderthal there has ever been was an angel? No, but I'm saying that that small population of angels, 1/3 of the angels who left their state, it could be maybe they transformed into Neanderthals, and as a result, they made it with the woman, and the woman gave birth to giants. And the process, or the mechanism for that probably would be hybrid vigor. Now, does it mean that happened? Does that mean I'm right? Absolutely not. Just an idea. It wouldn't even be a hypothesis. Just something I was thinking about. Just because I'm trying to put two and two together, and I'm trying to understand from this ancient point of view what exactly was going on. Because if something like this really were happening, they didn't even have the scientific knowledge to even write this stuff down. They wouldn't even be able to explain it right in their point of view. These weren't scientifically savvy people, and so we really do have to reconstruct what was going on from the archaeological evidence, piece together, uh, and almost in a sense demystify or demythologize what they thought. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that's what I thought previously. Saw this new evidence a couple days ago, and I changed my mind completely. And I'm going to tell you what I think of now after I show you this piece of evidence. So right now, if you see my screen, this is a jawbone that they found in the earth, in the layer of the earth that's about 40,000 years old. So we have relative dating, as you guys know. We have absolute dating, and so when we dig into the earth, um, we can know how old something is depending on which layer it's found at. And we dated this jawbone back to 40,000 years ago. Now, the interesting thing about this jawbone is we actually extracted some DNA from out of it. And the DNA from this jawbone was actually half human, half Neanderthal. And so, like I said before, I said it could be that, who knows, people might have been interbreeding with Neanderthals and had children. Well, this is the love child of a Neanderthal and a human. This is the jawbone of it. I was right. So that prediction is actually confirmed. And if you go over to this paper right here, this paper says, or this article says, the ancestors of both modern Europeans and Asians have interbred with Neanderthals some 50,000 years ago. Researchers who are looking at DNA by race have wondered why East Asians have greater population of the ancestry compared to Europeans. New research reveals that the heavy-browed Neanderthals bred with East Asians on numerous occasions. Thus, con- oh, contemporary East Asians have higher levels of Neanderthal DNA, according to studies which were published in the American Journal of Human Genetics. So, over in the East Asians, over in the Middle East, um, people were actually interbreeding with Neanderthals and having kids with them. Now, does that mean, therefore, that the kids that the Neanderthals and humans uh, procreated, or I'm sorry, they produced, um, were really tall, quote unquote giants? Absolutely not. I found this the other day, and this is just a paper talking about how we now have some new studies saying that. Hold on, let me go to the other paper. That these people who lived in the Paleolithic era of time, right? These mammoth hunters, they were the tallest people in the world. So if you go down in the article and you keep on reading, it says the remains of Gravantine men suggest that they stood between 5 foot 10 inches and 6 foot 2 inches on average, which was an extraordinary size for the time. In contrast, men among the ancient Maya, who lived several thousand years later, were 5 foot 2 inches tall on average. Mayan women were about 4 foot tall on average. So, another one of the things I basically hypothesized about, or I predicted, was, hey, maybe these giants were 6 foot tall, because Goliath's height is 6 foot 6 in the Bible. His height was 6 foot 6 inches. But I did say, well, it could be that everybody back then, because they were so short, maybe Goliath was just tall to them. Now, I changed my opinion. I changed my mind. I do not believe in the previous model that, or that, hey, it could be possible that these angels, transformed into Neanderthals, interbred with humans, and bam, hybrid vigor takes process, and you got really tall, half human, half Neanderthal people walking around. No evidence of that. The new article that I just found the other day, it absolutely falsifies what I thought about before. These 6 foot tall people, they were in fact people. Um, I haven't I haven't found any evidence to show that they weren't people, or that they were somewhat Neanderthal or what. Even though Neanderthals actually are humans, um, still doesn't mean that Christians can't believe that the Genesis 6 account with the angels is true. Um, we may not be able to explain the process of how it happened, but as far as the evidence goes, um, it seems like everything else pretty much lines up. There were really tall people living around 50 to 45,000 years ago. If you want to take that was the actual date of the biblical flood, which I do, so it lines up perfectly with that. We do have evidence that people interbred with Neanderthals, and people were just running amok, going crazy. And we do have evidence that the climate was changing rapidly around 45 to 50,000 years ago, and so that could have been one of the causes of the flood. Now, in the actual biological process of how the angels became human, or how the angels actually uh, were able to procreate with these women, we may never know. In the same sense that we have all of the evidences for the resurrection of Jesus, that basically show that the tomb, in fact, was empty. We have probable cause to believe that Jesus did rise from the dead. However, will we ever be able to explain the process of how this happened and the mechanisms involved? Maybe, probably not. But as you guys know, in a court of law, you actually don't need to actually know exactly how step by step uh, an event happened. All you need is evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that some event did take place, and that's good enough. So I'll take my evidence for what it is right now. Um, I don't know how exactly the whole process happened biologically, but we have all the other evidences pointing to that there are some nuggets of truth in the Genesis flood account, and also if you don't know, the account in Genesis actually I think comes from Enoch, and Enoch got it from some other books. So these were just traditional stories that were passed down that these things could have really been happening in those regions. Um, I think there's some nuggets of truth in it. Um, but as for explaining how it all happened, I don't know. Uh, I'm still investigating. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on my model. My mind has been changed. Been making some revisions. General and I will be talking about this more in the background. Like for example, we even talk about the virgin birth because I have a model for how I think the virgin birth could have happened. And General and I, we don't see eye to eye on that. But we'll keep on working and we'll keep on doing investigations and searching. And you know, who knows? Maybe I'll falsify his model. Maybe he'll falsify mine. My model, that part of it actually was falsified. So I gotta make some revisions. So that's pretty much it. I'm about to open up another hangout probably, so people can come in and they can talk about their views on the flood and how do they think I should view it and how do I think they should view it. It'll be a good talk. But if you guys have been listening, for the people who have been listening, uh, thanks for taking the time out your day and listening to what I believe and what I think happened. And until next time, good luck and good night.